Hi, my dearest of family. Today we are going to be talking about the upcoming Saturn-Mars square. So, of course, Saturn and Mars are considered to be malefic planets, and Mars is out of bound right now. I made a video about that previously. So, we might be experiencing some extra volatile energies with the upcoming Mars-Saturn square. So, Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius and Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. So we are going to be exploring what it might mean on a personal level as well as on a global level. And I'm going to try to give you some manifestations as well as how to work with this energy, because that's the most important part to use the best out of, even with a bit of a you know, intense type of planetary configurations. Now you have got 2 more days from my Black Friday sale. So if you would like to grab a webinar, a course, or a reading with me, all of them are discounted with 50%. Then you have got 2 more days left. It's going to finish on Sunday, exactly at midnight European time. Okay, so make sure that you visit my website, AstroViktor.com, and then check out my services. But let's just break down, and I'm going to share the screen so I can show you some fun stuff, because there is a lot of things to do here. So I want to bring up the exact chart to start with. Sorry, that's not the one. But actually, we can kind of like look at that as well, because one of the most important part is when you are looking at, for example, a square, there's always an initiation point. There is always where the two planetary energies planting the seeds. Now, this happened on 10th of April 2024 on 14 degree of Pisces. This is where the initial conjunction took place between the two planetary energies. So firstly, if you have got any planets on 14 degree of Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, or Virgo, then it means that this is going to be actually a very important square for you. So this is what we call in astrology a synodic cycle. So that's the reason why it's also kind of like important. And you can also approach it from a phase angle point of view as well. So for example, if you have got natally a square between Saturn and Mars, then actually it's also super important. Doesn't matter in what signs the square happens, but it would be actually important for you, because the planets are kind of like lining up in the sky exactly the same way, like in your birth chart. The other sensitive degree that I would like to give you is, which was the opposition degree. And the opposition degree took place on 1 degree of Aries to 1 degree of Libra. So this was the culmination point of that particular initiation. So if you have got any planets on 1 degree of Aries or 1 degree of Libra, then this might be again a super important planetary energy for you. And lastly, the last sensitive degree that I would like to give you is actually the 25 degree Sagittarius or 25 degree of Pisces. The reason why, because this exact square between these two planets are going to be taking place on the 8th or the 9th of December, depending on your location. And Saturn will be on 25 degree and Mars is going to be on 25 degree as well. So these are going to be your sensitive degrees. One more time, let's collect them so that you can check out your natal chart. You can check out your progress and solar return chart, or even your solar arc chart. We've got the 14 degree of Pisces, 25 degree of Pisces, 1 degree of Aries, 1 degree of Libra, or 25 degree of Sagittarius. These are the sensitive degrees for you. So let's talk about this square to start with. It's a square, so this is a tension. Mars is the planet of action, drive, assertion. squaring Saturn, which represents restrictions, structure, discipline. A square always represents a friction potentially between our impulses and reality. Mars represents our impulses, Saturn is the planet of reality. So often a square indicates certain type of frustrations or obstacles, even delays as well. So I'm trying to get something done. I'm trying to achieve something, basically your efforts, which is Mars, but it is meeting the planet of resistance and blockages. So depending, of course, of the house position of these planetary energies, for example, Mars would like to get fitter because it has got a vision, like, for example, Mars in the first house right now. But I'm running into certain type of, let's say, family blockages where with Pisces I have to be taking care of my sick parents, for example, and I cannot hit the gym as often as I would like to. So this is how you are going to be reading that together. So you might feel like you are constantly running into a wall, or your energy is being drained, or you feel like that the anger cannot actually be repressed or suppressed. Yeah, expressed. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Or you feel like that your anger that is suppressed, I cannot actually express it somehow. So this might be telling us that it's a time for us to strategically reevaluate. Saturn demands that your action is more disciplined, more realistic, more focused on long-term goals. It kind of forces you to slow down slightly bit, or redefine your strategies, or build something with integrity that is going to be long lasting. Now, because Mars is out of bound and it is really eager right now to get going, it might not be listening to Saturn as much. But what's going to be very interesting is that both planets are governed by Jupiter, so which I'm going to talk about. So both planets kind of like has to be listening to Jupiter, but I'm coming on to that in a short while. So let's remember that Mars is out of bound in the sign of Sagittarius. So what it means is that your drive and your passion are operating without the usual energetic limits. So it's kind of like a little bit of an unbridled energy or exceptional ambition or a bold willingness to take risks. It's kind of like disregarding the laws, the universal laws, our energy levels, and so forth. I'm just pushing everything as much as I can. And because it's in the sign of Sagittarius, that uninhibited action is so connected to our ideology, truth seeking, the protection of freedom, kind of like the Crusades. So this Mars wants to take these big steps towards an inspirational goal, or it is super self-righteous or even arrogant. So it might be fighting battles without proper consideration for the consequences, kind of like ignoring the rules. Or I've got this unusual idea that I want to kind of like achieve, where I want to go on this like unusual adventure. For example, I want to be in Big Brother. So that's the type of energy that the out of bound Mars kind of like represents. To kind of like put it all together, this Mars in the sign of Sagittarius wants to charge ahead. It wants to fight for the truth. It wants to break free from any type of limitations. And Saturn is kind of like saying, listen, there are certain type of rules. Be cautious about it. And this is where the frustration is coming from. Now, remember that Saturn is in shadow period. So it went direct recently, but it is still sitting on its stationary degree to start with, and it's in shadow zone. So it could represent a couple of things. Um, it could indicate that the shadow is kind of like something that Saturn started internally to recalibrate within us, but we still have got certain type of doubts, or we don't have the clarity just yet. The clarity could be coming once Saturn moves, let's say, to 26 degree. It's going to come slowly, but the entire clarity or the picture that is kind of like formulating in our head is only going to be happening once Saturn reaches about 2 degrees of Aries. This is where it went retrograde a good 4.5 months ago. So Saturn maybe has been trying to establish certain type of boundaries. It is still somehow blurred. We've got an idea exactly what we want to do, but we are not sure whether this is the right way to do that. So certain type of obstacles are unclear here. Now, with this aspect, we can feel a loss of motivation or a confusion about the direction or the need to let go of goals before, new ones can emerge. But we can also get scared to let go of those, let's say, stable job, even though Mars is like whispering into our ears that, oh yeah, go for it, it's gonna work out brilliantly. This is going to be the bestest time of our life. And then Saturn has got certain type of doubts and fears. Maybe this is, oh my days, the oil prices are just going up, Pisces, or oh, the film industry is really rocky right now, and all these type of topics could be coming up in our head. Of course, to make it more personal, it could even indicate that I'm just super scared to let go of something because what if it doesn't work out and let's say I'm unable to pay the bills? Now, I could not miss the fact that Mars is actually in conjunction to Juno as well. So, Juno, which represents partnership as well as commitments, also contractual agreements as well. So, this could indicate certain type of conflicts that might erupt concerning power dynamics or even boundaries as well. It could indicate that a partner or yourself may be acting outside the rules, let's say, of the relationship. And of course, it could be for the better or worse as well. Let's say we want to define the roles in our relationship, and from now on, you are going to be washing up the plates. And I'm not going to do that. I used to do it, but now I don't want to do it. And if it comes to an agreement, that's great because Juno represents agreement. If we cannot agree, then it basically represents an element of a fight. So this is a high pressure cooker type of combination here, which is connected to certain type of connections. Of course, let's suppose that Mars and Juno are in your 10th house. This could be with a boss of yours. If it's in the 6th house, it could represent, for example, a co-worker. If it's in your 7th house, it represents a partner. If it's in the 4th house, it represents a family member, and so forth. So there is a core conflict at the center connected to commitments. And that is demanding an action so that we can align with the deeper, perhaps spiritual understanding of what would be fair here. Now, like I said, the initial conjunction, the initial seeds got or took place in the sign of Pisces. So I'm going to give you examples of how to read this together in a short while, so just stay tuned. And by the way, it was in Sagittarius dwells. So this is where the seeds got planted back in April 2024. Don't think that it must have happened exactly on the 10th of April, okay? So potentially you might want to give one plus minus 1 month on each side of that date, and then you should see, what type of seeds you try to plant there. So that was a seeding of a new reality. We fused the will of Mars and Saturn structure. And right now we've got a waning square happening. A waning square represents a crisis of consciousness, a call for release. So, in a way, you are forced to look at the work initiated at the conjunction and determine what is no longer viable. The tension is surely about letting go, refining, or potentially preparing for the next cycle's completion. Now, the next cycle is going to be happening in 2028. I can give you the degrees as well, or is the exact date, but it's going to be happening in the sign of Taurus. So 2028, April 30th, it's going to be happening on 2 degree of Taurus. So you can see that basically Mars and Saturn meet approximately every about 2 years or so. And usually they are skipping one sign. Sometimes it happens in the same sign, but that's a little bit rare. Okay, so, but we don't want to talk about 2028 just yet because that's way further up there. Sorry, the next cycle, sorry, I gave you the wrong one. The next cycle is happening on 2026, April 19. It's going to be happening on 7 degree of Aries, and it's going to be actually a huge stellium there. But we're going to talk about that next year. So with the initial seed, let me just go back to that chart so that we grasp it fully. It would pretty much indicate that somehow this current square is asking you to reckon with the structures that resulted from that initial, maybe overly ambitious or a little bit spiritually tangled kind of like efforts. So this out-of-bound Mars is fighting for an idealized truth, but the Saturn in Pisces reality is dissolving, trying to dissolve those beliefs and proving them unsustainable. Basically, Saturn says it doesn't work. Out-of-bound Mars in Sagittarius is trying to break the boundaries, but the core issue began with Saturn trying to define the boundaries in a boundaryless sign, which is Pisces. So this current action feels excessive because the initial rule or the set of rules were flawed or it was kind of like impossible. So how are you going to read this together in your natal chart? Let me just give you one example. So for example, let's imagine this is our chart, right? So this is our natal chart. So it happened, let's say, in the sixth house, the initial seed. So that means that, let's say, I wanted to get in shape. I wanted to lose weight. With Pisces, we want to lose something. And then now Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius. Let's say that's going to be your fourth house. And of course, Saturn is still in your sixth house. So how does that add to our fourth house? So like I tried losing weight, for example, and I realized that emotionally I am not functioning to the bestest version of myself. And I've got something to do around that. Or like I said, this is a closing square, and that's often a representation of letting go of something and preparing for the next cycle, or having to renew something, or it's a crisis in our consciousness. So I have to realize that my emotional habits are hindering me from certain type of weight loss. Okay, so there's just one example here, but of course it highly depends on your natal chart as well, having to look at what Mars or Saturn rules and where they are placed natally in your chart as well. This is exactly when I would be able to give you the full picture, what it means in your natal chart. So, basically this cycle started April 2024. Now we are in 2025, December. So the seeding, we were about setting a structure for action and will, focused potentially on spiritual, imaginative, compassionate goals, saving something, and so forth. The sub-theme there was Sagittarius topics, because the initial seed happened on Sagittarius what? And this was about searching for the meaning, searching for truth and justice, and trying to figure out the meaning to life, trying to find ways of manifesting our dreams, or potentially we had a grand ideology there. So, this is a question that you might want to ask. What disciplined actions will I take to serve my highest ideal or faith? And once the conjunction took place, this was a time of taking a serious oath or even making a long-term sacrifice. And then now the square is asking you to determine whether it was successful or the stuff that I initiated back in 2024, it didn't work. I need to let that go, or I have to be making certain type of adjustments around it. So this is a little bit of a testing time right now. So let me just go back right now to the current chart. Okay, I'm just going to adjust it because looks like I didn't bring that up. Just gonna go a month forward and a few days backwards. Here you go. That's where we are. So this is a test period for you right now. We've got that unconstrained out of bound Mars, which is pushing the boundaries here. It's really pushing the drive to figure out the truth or to gain the freedom back. And maybe it's letting Saturn know that, listen, the rules that you came up with 1.5 years ago is just not working. My truth demands freedom. I must break every rule and expand beyond this limit. I don't really care who you are. And then Saturn in Pisces says the boundaries were set by a sacrificial need. And it cannot work all the time. It cannot work for everyone. I'm really sorry about it, but you need to adhere, you need to go with these rules. So this is exactly what's happening. Now, because Mars and Juno made a conjunction, it looks like that I'm coming up with a new kind of like, on one hand, commitment or a kind of new partnership. So I'm trying to gather alliances who are going to be telling Saturn, who is the governor, that because potentially if two of us are telling the governor that it doesn't work, or three of us, or 10 of us, right? Because it's Sagittarius, so it's about more and more. Let's collect as many alliances as possible. You know what movie comes to my mind? It's The Breaking Down. When Bella and the family are collecting witnesses, that Bella gave birth just at the right stage of her becoming a vampire and stuff like that. Now, this is exactly the scenario that comes to my mind with this current square. So I'm collecting witnesses, I'm collecting alliances who are supporting my vision or who are helping me to defend that I'm in the right. So this Mars is super motivated to do that. Now, like I said, we had a opposition happening between Saturn and Mars back in August. And I gave you already the dates and the sensitive degrees for that. But that went down August 8th. Yeah, here you go. August 8th. So this was a culmination point. This was also a test, but it was a culmination, kind of like exposing what works, what doesn't necessarily work, what type of tweaks we have to be making. Or this Mars got really frustrated and then, it took some pioneering actions. So from looking at the other way around, this could be a moment when Mars realizes that, you know what, the stuff that I did in the past was not necessarily too ethical. So I'm going to have to kind of do something about it. And this Mars can feel super motivated to get things right. So basically, the unconstrained will is now acting on wisdom gained from the August opposition. And we might have learned something around that time. So that's why Mars currently might be taking some explosive actions taken in the name of truth or freedom. That's how I would put it together. So the entire core message here is whether you can take decisive, mature action to dismantle a restrictive structure that is holding your life back or that is holding you down, pinning you down, especially when it comes to your committed alliances or freedom or truth that you deep down know is required. Uh, the resolution lies in certain type of discipline surrender or the possibility of a compassionate closure. Imagine that, you are in a relationship where things are not working. Instead of just fighting, maybe we're gonna have to say goodbye to each other. Cutting ties that bind you to that initial idealistic structure forged back in April 2024. So, I started thinking about, the news, what went down in 2024, April, and maybe how this might be playing out in the world. And one thing that came to my mind was something to do with border or water disputes, for example, where we try to impose or hardening boundaries, when it comes to areas of water, oil, or the seas, or even topics of water resources that could be coming up here. Of course, it could talk to us about spiritual or ideological struggles as well. Like, I don't feel that I'm fairly treated, for example. And if I'm thinking about 2025 August, that was very much the peak crisis where the foundational structure from April 2024 was proved to be incompatible with reality. So that was really about clashes of identities and alliances, or there could have been a crisis in governments, failures in diplomacy and law, and this could have led to impulsive military actions, for example, or of course, the desire to break free and act independently was at war with the Saturnian need for balance because it was in the sign, Libra was there as well. And it looks like that we are going to be coming up to a closing chapter. Now, this closing chapter is going to last until 2026 April. So basically until the next conjunction. Was that April? Did I give you right? 2026 April 19. That's when the new conjunction is going to be happening. So the predictions I pretty much made here, it is a good 6, 7 months. This could have talked to us about some ideological media clash as well. When out of bound Mars is unleashing an aggressive boundary breaking, fight for truth through media, legal battles, international protests. And rhetorics are pretty extreme, very uncompromising with this. Um, Maybe I can imagine certain type of final decisions being made uh, by, let's say, using military or legal moves to kind of like end a long-standing conflict. So somehow we might be doing something too erratic that we would not normally do to be able to end something that has been, of course, kind of like poisonous. Now, we are going to be breaking this down very briefly for all 12 signs. So I'm just going to pop up a chart here again, just with few sentences so that I can give you some clues of how this might be playing out in your life. So also, let me just adjust so that you can see um, exactly where things are happening in your natal chart. So let's start with Aries rising sign. Aries rising sign, you had the initial conjunction happening in your 12th house, which is hidden matters, self-undoing, a lot of healings and endings. Currently, Mars is in your ninth house, which is the house of beliefs, law, travel, and of course, Saturn is still in the 12th house. So it looks like that you need for truth and expansion, but it's being blocked by subconscious fears or self-sabotaging structures. So Mars feels like that I have to be taking this drastic action to release a hidden structure, something that maybe I started working on behind the scenes a good 1.5 years ago. And then it's the realization that somehow it is limiting currently my future path. And maybe this is an indication that I'm ready to move on. So the seed 2024 for you Aries was to kind of set discipline around healing, self-undoing, certain type of spiritual practices. And then with the ninth house getting connected right now, maybe it is telling you that, listen, that mentor is not working for me, or the truth hasn't been revealed to me, or I have to be making modifications of that healing procedure that I am on right now because I've hit a wall. There are certain type of further limitations there that I need to be able to kind of like resolve. So it might indicate that the action that you need to be taking is to expose and break free from the self-imposed prison or certain type of karmic restrictions so that you can reclaim your own future. Taurus rising sign. So uh, your initial conjunction took place in the 11th house. So maybe you made a commitment to a long-term goal, or you made a commitment to a social group, or you made a friendship. And now Mars and Juno is happening in your eighth house, which is somehow intensifying that. But there is this uninhibited drive for shared resources, intimacy, and that restructuring. Somehow this is forcing a confrontation with your social commitments. So this might be telling you that you are meant to be cutting ties with a group, an alliance, with a long-term goal that you might have initiated last year because it is not compatible anymore with your current emotional or financial scenarios or even with your current relationship as well. Gemini rising sign. So the initial seed happened in your 10th house, which might indicate that you have started a new career, or you started working on your public reputation, or maybe some of your relationships with authority figures went haywire. Now, Mars is in the 7th house, which is definitely looking for justice, and I'm looking for freedom. So this could indicate that you are somehow being forced to leave a job behind, or you are kind of like violently checking your long-term career structures, whether it is serving my needs or not. Or imagine that actually you don't want to leave your job, but somehow competitions are coming into the picture, undermining your authority level, and then maybe you get tired of it and then you just want to walk out of the window. So this is somehow what it tells us is that the partnership demands you to dismantle the limiting professional matters or status you have been sacrificing for. So even it can indicate that the partner is getting tired of you not giving them enough attention, for example. Or if you have been working together with your partner that we want to depart, we don't want to run the business anymore together because something is not working, and then let's do two separate businesses for each other. Okay, Cancer rising sign. So you had the seed in your ninth house, which is higher education, international travel, or developing a life philosophy or developing a new belief system. Maybe you started your spiritual journey, or you had been thinking about relocating, for example. Now, Mars is in your sixth house. So there is an unconstrained action there on work, health, daily routines, and that is somehow in conflict with a restrictive philosophy or religious structures or spiritual beliefs and so forth. So the action that we must take here is to eliminate an ideology or a belief that is preventing you from achieving maybe a functional day-to-day life. Imagine that you have been planning to relocate, for example, and then now maybe you are going to relocate because you realize that the health system in that particular country where I am is just not functioning well, and I need certain type of medical attention, for example. Of course, there are many other ways to think about this, but I'm just going to be giving one example to each sign. Leo rising sign, the initial conjunction took place in your eighth house. So we made certain type of commitments here connected to money, joint finances, or intimacy matters as well. I made commitments to transform, potentially transform your body, transform your life, or to get better with maintaining and handling money. Now, Mars is in the fifth house, and this Mars is super passionate to express its own desire, or it wants to gain creative freedom, or it wants to improve romance and intimacy department. But it can feel like that we hit a wall of financial or certain type of intimate restrictions. So it says that we have to be able to release a financial burden, or if there are certain type of intimate entanglements, then I'm going to have to be reclaiming my capacity for joy. So I have to be able to find something that I truly enjoy, especially if I made commitments to something that wasn't really up to my kind of like likings, but I had to do it. Virgo rising sign. So the initial conjunction took place in your seventh house. So we implemented certain type of structures in our key commitments, marriage, one-to-one professional partnership, even contractual agreements, legal matters. And then now Mars is in the fourth house. So it somehow shows that this Mars wants to take uncompromising action within the home environment or within the family, or even it could indicate certain type of relocational energies as well. And it looks like we are at a final confrontation with the commitments we made towards a partner, or the partner made certain type of commitments, but it could feel like that they are acting out, they are not following that commitment that we have kind of like agreed on, or we agreed on 1.5 years ago. So this is a crisis now where it forces you to restructure or end a core partnership so that you can establish true emotional and physical security at home. I mean, if Virgo, for example, you had initial problems in 2024 in your relationship, then this Mars is somehow making that home environment a little bit more volatile, making you be aware that there needs to be an element of a closure. Libra rising signs. So you had the initial conjunction in the sixth house, which is work, daily routines, service, health related matters. Now Mars is in the third house. So there is definitely a lot of push there to communicate freedom, to learn, to study, even to share knowledge as well with others, or to become an advocate for the local community. But it is getting blocked somehow with work or health like limitations. So the action is that you must cut the cords on a restrictive daily work or a certain type of health habits so that you can free up your mind and you can find your voice to pursue your current truth. I mean, maybe this Mars is very willing to, open a YouTube channel, for example. But I've got so much work and burden, and I don't know, the to-do list is endless that I have no time for it. Scorpio rising sign, initial conjunction took place in your fifth house. So it looks like that we started establishing a creative project, a hobby. or even a new ways of raising children or getting into certain type of a relationship. Now, Mars is now in the second house, and Mars is boundary pushing to find income, to increase resources, or self-worth matters as well. But of course, it is in conflict with that creative commitment, relational commitment that we made. So, here on one hand, this might be telling us that we must be willing to sacrifice a source of pleasure or a creative project that is potentially draining our energy or finances, and we might need to be replacing that with something else. Of course, Mars says, no, I'm going to be pushing more to find the money for my children, to find the money for my hobbies and all those type of stuff. And Saturn says, I'm not too sure if I want to do that. Sagittarius rising sign, the initial conjunction took place in your fourth house. So maybe you bought a new home, you welcomed a new family member into your home, or you started working on your emotional foundation or a relationship with a family member. Now, Mars is in the first house, and it says that, it's a personal action that I'm about to be taking. And I'm kind of like really checking out those limiting family, domestic structures, or I'm really going to be pushing to be able to rent a property out or to fix up a property and so forth. So there is somehow self-liberation happening here, where you must decide to break out of family obligations or home situations so that you can step into this more authentic version of yourself. Capricorn rising sign, initial conjunction took place in your third house. And maybe the seed was a very serious, disciplined effort connected to social media channels, learning, studying, or let's say working together with the sibling. Now, Mars is in the 12th, so there is something aggressive, hidden, or sacrificial work, but it confronts your rigid boundaries around learning and communicative environments, local environment, and so forth. So this might be telling you to release certain type of mental blockages or restrictive mindset, to be able to channel this unconstrained action towards a goal of yours that you can start working on behind the scenes. So imagine that the local environment you are in is, it's somehow restrictive. They don't understand what exactly I want to do. And I'm going to have to be able to kind of cut them out of my life. Aquarius rising signs, initial conjunction took place in your second house. So maybe you have become more disciplined to increase your income, to do the budgeting, to establish better self-worth. Now, Mars is in the 11th house, which definitely has got a lot of uninhibited drive for goals and group activisms. And, maybe you are even aggressively checking your financial reality. So it might tell you that either in order for me to be able to go for that future goal of mine, I'm going to have to sacrifice my financial security, or I'm going to have to kind of, get rid of the financial security blanket. And I'm going to have to push towards, that commitment I am trying to make connected with my vision, future hopes, and so forth. Without that, this might not be working out. Of course, Saturn at the same time is afraid of sacrificing the finances there. And last but not least, Pisces rising sign, the initial conjunction took place in your first house. So that was a total overhaul of your identity, your body, your personal life directions. Now, Mars is in the 10th house, which is taking this unconstrained action to improve career and public status. It looks like this is a final confrontation, with that heavy, confusing identity or self-structure. And the action that we might need to be taking is to shed that old, heavy identity body that you have been carrying for a while so that you can step into a public role that you might be currently hoping for or fighting for. Yeah, so this is the 12th sign, guys. I hope this helps a little bit and gives you clarification of how we can work with this planetary energy. And if you like the video, please subscribe, press like, and all those lovely things so that you don't miss my upcoming videos. Thank you very much and have a lovely weekend, everyone. Bye bye.